The bold and the beautiful, the ultrasound conspiracy that shook Forrester. The hallways of Forrester Creations have seen scandal, heartbreak, betrayal, but nothing quite like this. It all began in silence in a dimly lit consultation room, where Carter stood frozen as the doctor gently delivered a blow that shattered the future he dreamed of. He was infertile. No room for error. No maybe next time. Just a quiet confirmation of what his body would never do, create life. The news gutted him, but there was no time to mourn. As Carter exited the building, still shaking, he stopped cold at the sight just ahead. Hope Logan, standing alone, tightly holding an ultrasound image to her chest. The implication was instant. Hope was pregnant. Carter, still reeling from the blow he'd just received, could only stare in shock. But someone else had seen it too. Someone whispered. And in a place like Forrester, whispers become wildfires. By the time Hope returned to her office, the rumors were already spiraling. The entire building was buzzing. Who was the father? How far along was she? Was it Thomas? Naturally, Thomas Forrester's name was the first to come up. The tension between him and Hope had been brewing for months. Furtive glances, ambiguous late-night meetings, a slow-burning chemistry neither had dared to name aloud. For many, it wasn't a question of if they had crossed a line, but when. The idea that Thomas might be the father made too much sense. But then the lab results came in. A preliminary genotyping standard procedure for Forrester insiders quickly ruled him out. The markers didn't match. The revelation hit like a slap to the face. Thomas, blindsided, denied everything too loudly, some said, but the science backed him up. He wasn't the father. The next to fall under suspicion was Liam. Ever the fallback in Hope's life, Liam had recently re-entered her orbit. He had made it clear he wanted to rebuild what they once had, to be a family again. But things had been tentative, distant. Still, the possibility lingered. Could Hope have faltered? Could Liam have been a moment of weakness? Quietly and without telling anyone, Liam submitted his own DNA for comparison. He waited in silence. And when the results came, he was forced to accept the truth. It wasn't him either. That's when the storm truly hit. Of all people. The next name floated up from the lab wasn't one whispered in gossip circles, it was John Finnegan. The lab's preliminary report showed a partial marker match. Not definitive, but strong enough to raise eyebrows. Too strong to ignore. For a moment, everyone in the room fell silent as if reality itself had paused. Finn, the doctor, the loyal husband to Steffi, the steady hand in a sea of chaos. The very idea was explosive. Steffi, of course, lost it. Her scream could be heard from the executive floor to the showroom. She barged into Finn's office, eyes blazing, demanding explanations he didn't have. Finn, just as stunned as the rest, insisted it was impossible. But the numbers didn't lie, or did they? Tensions exploded. Forrester Creations became a battleground. Steffi accused Hope of seducing her husband. Hope, equally outraged, fired back that she had no idea how her pregnancy had become a forensic puzzle. Finn, caught in the middle, ordered a second, more thorough test to clear his name. That's when things took a darker turn. During the sample audit for the follow-up test, a technician noticed something strange. The barcoded vial containing Hope's original sample had a time-stamped discrepancy. According to the system logs, her sample had been removed from cold storage for 7 minutes, long enough to thaw, be compromised, or worse, be replaced. The seal wasn't fully intact. Security footage showed a shadowy figure, identity unclear, entering the lab. During the time in question, they wore a technician badge, but the face was obscured by a hood and mask. The footage was grainy, the identity impossible to confirm. What was once a scandal had become something else entirely: sabotage. The implications were massive. Someone had manipulated the test results. Someone had tampered with medical evidence, possibly to frame or protect someone involved. And the only question, more urgent than who's the father, was now, who wanted to control the answer? The Forrester-Spencer-Finnegan axis, always a tightrope of shifting alliances, now felt like a powder keg. Every family had something to lose. Every motive was valid. Was it a Spencer trying to exile Finn? A Forrester aiming to discredit Hope? Or someone with a more personal vendetta? Brooke Logan, protective of her daughter, launched her own private investigation. Ridge, trying to stay neutral, failed miserably as his loyalties were yanked in every direction. Steffi wanted blood. Liam wanted answers. Carter, still reeling from his own personal devastation, kept mostly silent. Watching everything unravel, his eyes filled with quiet questions no one dared ask aloud. And Hope? Hope was a storm in disguise. Beneath her calm demeanor, something was shifting. This wasn't just about her child anymore. It was about power, about control, about identity. Someone had tried to rewrite her story again, and she wasn't going to let it happen. The lab's full audit came back days later. The compromised sample had been definitively altered, but the original was gone, disposed of, replaced. The chain of custody broken. The results officially invalidated. Finn demanded an independent test with a new sample. Hope agreed. This time, the process was locked down, triple-checked, sealed, guarded, and when the results returned pure, untouched, the answer silenced the room. Finn was not the father. But the twist didn't end there. The new test revealed something else, something no one expected. The sample carried markers that didn't align with any known current match, but hinted at a distant familial relation to the Forrester line. A rogue cousin? A buried affair? A name not yet brought into the light? The possibilities exploded. What started as a pregnancy rumor had mutated into a full-scale forensic mystery. Someone had gone to extreme lengths to cover their tracks. Someone powerful. Someone close. And someone who knew the ins and outs of Forrester's infrastructure well enough to game the system. Everyone was a suspect now. Donna Logan, surprisingly quiet, made a call to someone from her past. Eric, still recovering, seemed unsettled by the reemergence of secrets buried decades ago. Zine, who'd been hovering on the edges of the drama, suddenly took an unexpected interest in the lab procedures. Even Paris raised eyebrows when she abruptly took a leave of absence, citing family matters. The web was only getting messier. Hope's pregnancy, once a simple announcement, had turned into a ticking time bomb. And with no confirmed father, no clean evidence, and no one taking responsibility for the tampered sample, the entire ecosystem of Los Angeles high society felt ready to implode. But Hope wasn't just a pawn anymore. This time, she was going to find the truth herself, whatever it took. And when she did, whoever had tried to use her child as leverage would discover they'd underestimated the wrong Logan. The game was on. The bold and the beautiful, the DNA firestorm that shattered the Forrester family. The walls of Forrester Creations had seen scandal. They had held whispers of infidelity, betrayal, and secret children. But nothing prepared the Forresters, the Spencers, or the Logans for the tidal wave about to crash through their lives. It began with one haunting image, an ultrasound clutched tightly in Hope Logan's hand. The sight, spotted by Carter moments after being told he could never father children, triggered a chain reaction no one could stop. Whispers became wildfire. The halls turned hostile, and every man remotely close to Hope was dragged into the storm. The first name on everyone's lips was Thomas Forrester. The history between him and Hope was no secret. Months of unresolved tension, lingering glances, shared creative visions bleeding into something far more personal. And under pressure, too much pressure, Thomas finally broke. In front of Ridge, Steffi, and Hope herself, he admitted what many had suspected. Yes, he had kissed Hope. Yes, they had nearly crossed the line. But no, they didn't. They stopped. And Hope, standing nearby, didn't deny it. There had been heat. There had been temptation. But no intimacy. No child. Still, doubt lingered. Liam, already on edge after being ruled out as the father by preliminary DNA tests, erupted in jealousy and rage. He stormed into Hope's home, accusing her of lies, betrayal, and manipulation. He threatened to pursue full custody of Beth if Hope didn't start telling the truth. But the truth wasn't hiding in Hope's words, it was hiding in her blood. Enter Carter. Devastated by his own diagnosis and unwilling to sit back while chaos consumed everyone, he turned to Dr. Lee Finnegan, desperate for answers that basic testing couldn't provide. Lee, clinical and cold, offered a solution, a non-invasive, next-generation genetic analysis capable of tracing ultra-rare genetic variants, far beyond standard paternity tests. It was expensive, complex, but definitive. Samples were collected again. Hope, under intense scrutiny, remained composed. Carter handed over the names Thomas, Liam, Finn, and even Zine for completeness. When the results arrived, they stunned everyone. All four were definitively ruled out. The entire room froze as Lee read the last page of the report. There, under the partial genetic correlation match section, sat a single name. R.J. Forrester. The silence wasn't just shock, it was devastation. R.J.? Sweet, innocent, conflict-avoiding R.J.? The son of Ridge and Brooke, the boy who had always tried to stay above the family's drama? Impossible. And yet the data spoke for itself. Hope collapsed into a chair, speechless. Brooke's face went pale. Ridge demanded a retest. Steffi exploded, accusing Hope of seducing her own stepbrother. Finn stood in stunned silence. Even Zine, furious at being dragged into the mess, couldn't hide his horror. And RJ didn't speak. Not at first. But when he finally did, what he said shattered everything all over again. I couldn't be the father, RJ said. I have a congenital condition, Klinefelter syndrome. I was diagnosed when I was younger. I've never talked about it because I didn't think it mattered. But I'm infertile. Completely. Biologically, I can't be anyone's father. It was like dropping a bomb in the middle of the room. Lee confirmed the condition in RJ's medical records. The genetic markers had to be a coincidence, except they weren't. RJ couldn't be the father, but the test showed a significant partial match, meaning someone closely related to him, someone on the same maternal lineage was. That's when Brooke broke down. She admitted something she had buried for decades, before Ridge, before Deacon, even before Eric. She had a brief relationship, barely more than a fling, with a man she'd never named. A European exchange student. A summer that ended too quickly. She'd lost touch and moved on. She never even told her sisters. That man, it now appeared, had fathered a child she never knew existed. A son. And that son was the biological father of Hope's unborn baby. Suddenly, the pieces began to fall into place. The DNA didn't match any of the current Forrester men, because the real father wasn't part of the family tree everyone knew. The match with RJ existed because RJ and the true father shared the same elusive maternal DNA strand, inherited from that unknown man. Brooke's forgotten past brought back to life through science and scandal. Hope, meanwhile, was reeling. She had no idea how this had happened. No memory of being with someone who fit that description. No name, no face, no context. The implication was horrifying. If she hadn't knowingly been with this man, then how had she become pregnant? Speculation turned dark. Questions mounted. Was Hope drugged? Was there a breach of trust? Did someone manipulate her, medically implant something during a routine appointment? Carter, now deeply involved, began demanding an investigation. Lee, faced with the professional and ethical implications, launched a full review of her clinic's security and procedures. Then came the bombshell. A former technician at Lee's clinic had been fired months ago for misconduct. No one had connected him to the Forresters at the time. But deeper digging revealed something chilling. He had a criminal record. And he had been in Italy around the same time Hope had gone for her international fashion tour. With this revelation, everything took a sinister turn. Brooke, desperate to protect her daughter, demanded answers. Ridge backed her, furious, ashamed, and humiliated that his own son had been dragged into this. Liam, caught between outrage and guilt, began questioning whether his campaign for custody was just ego masking heartbreak. Steffi, always ready for war, began investigating the technician herself, using Forrester's vast resources to uncover the man's identity and his connection to Brooke's past. The technician, whose real name was Marco Delano, had changed identities several times. And when Ridge saw an old photo, his face went white. "That's the guy," Ridge said. "That's the same guy from all those years ago. He was with Brooke. That's him, Marco Delano, Brooke's summer fling. The missing link. The man who had fathered a child she never knew about. Who had now re-entered the Forrester world under a false name and possibly violated her daughter, in a twisted attempt to reconnect his bloodline to the family that cast him out. Hope's pregnancy was no longer just a scandal. It was now part of a long-buried revenge plot, one that involved identity theft, medical manipulation, and psychological warfare. It wasn't just about who fathered the child. It was about why. And the answer was clear. Marco had orchestrated this. He had found a way through deception, through technology, through betrayal to insert himself back into the Logan bloodline. And he had used Hope as the vessel. The Forresters mobilized legal teams, security, investigators. Carter, now fiercely protective of Hope, pledged to take Marco down personally. Lee, horrified that her clinic had been used for such a violation, offered to work hand in hand with law enforcement to gather evidence. Hope, finally grasping the magnitude of what had been done to her, stood in front of her family and made a quiet, chilling vow. "This child will be mine. But Marco will never touch a part of my life again." From that moment, the war changed. It was no longer about paternity. It was about reclaiming power, healing scars, and ending the legacy of manipulation that had haunted the Forresters, the Logans, and the Spencers for generations. And as the days ahead promised more courtrooms, more secrets, and more reckoning, one thing was certain.